Well, hi there. It's Jennifer Huff, and we're here on Thriving Life Podcast. What? And I'm wearing the doggy love. Probably because I'm going to talk a little bit about love today in terms of how do we actually flourish through these times without actually having burnout? What causes burnout? Why do we do it when sometimes we know exactly what there is to do, but it feels like you can't even help yourself? And what do you do if you're already burnt out? And the way I'm going to approach today is going to be a little bit, you know me, we're going to take it down the road of some stories, in fact, that are coming directly from a retreat that we're having right now. And there were some themes today that I think speak directly to the idea of thriving regardless of what's going on around you. Welcome to the Thriving Life Podcast. I'm Jennifer Huff. I'm on a mission to empower you with the knowledge, experiences, and tools to turn your dreams into reality. If you're ready for permanent shifts in your ability to stay unstuck, make glass ceilings your new floors, and want practical tools rooted in applied physics and neuroplasticity to live a life of fulfillment, this podcast is for you. Let's get thriving forward. How do you define burnout? What are the causes of burnout? What are some ways of being shifts? So when I say strategies, it's not like daily, I'm not really interested in teaching you the daily things you can do, because in these times of great change, teaching you skills that you may or not remember, I'm looking for efficiencies. And our clients and the people that listen to our podcast are people that are looking for efficiencies that are like permanent cellular shifts, whole paradigm shifts, rather than having to remember moment by moment little skills. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I call that the difference between surviving really well and actually thriving. In thriving, we actually shift to new paradigms where you don't even have to think about or try to manage or spend a lot of effort on micromanaging all the little things that you need to remember to make sure you feel better in the moment. A friend of mine called non-paradigm shifts that cause non-regressive changes in the way that you approach life. Let's have a little chat about that, shall we? What are non-regressive shifts? So what's burnout? The best way I can describe burnout is based on my history running a very large integrative health clinic. Burnout is what happens just straight up physically, biologically. So this isn't spiritually or emotionally, but this is biologically. But you'll get it. It happens when you transcend or overrun your glands and organs with more than they can cope with. So if your nervous system has more than it can cope with, it and that happens over time. So you're maybe in an abusive situation for some people, but for some people, having things be off kilter just with respect to the kids being freedom seekers can be enough. It doesn't even take an abusive relationship. It also depends on the degree to which you care about how much things look like your pretty picture. So if you're someone that likes to have a lot of control, or at least the perception of a lot of control, and things around you don't match your pretty picture, the degree to which you have to use your energy, your adrenals, your thyroid, your nervous system to try to control your situation is another way you can overwhelm yourself. If you have a lot of shoulds, musts, and have tos, and the people around you or team around you don't comply, then your glands and organs, your nervous system, and your emotionality can't handle everything looking different than what you wish it did. You'll very easily burn out. When you carry the happiness of others and people around you aren't happy and they haven't empowered themselves yet. And then you start taking on making sure they're not unhappy, forgetting, of course, that that's more about you and not about them, because you don't want to be a witness to their unhappiness and it's affecting you. Most of the time, when we're trying to make someone else happy, it's because of how comfortable we are, uncomfortable we are with them being unhappy. These are the kinds of ways of being that cause burnout. Sometimes it's an entire paradigm, which I had. My father and my father's father and my father's father were engineers who wanted to keep the bridge standing. So everything had to be perfect. My grandfather was someone who built some of the first hydroelectric dams in the world. And if you got one thing wrong, that bridge was coming down or that dam was going to break. We can take on the responsibility or the weight of the world. But the thing is that got passed on from generation to generation. My father, who actually was not an engineer, but the rest of them were, uh, he took on the same thing that his father had, which was this perfectionism. Got to get it right. Got to get it perfect. Got to get the goal done. Got to win the game. And in our household, that got passed on. And so everything for me had to be done perfectly, according to whom? Not according to me or my heart. And when we run our lives according to others' parameters, it definitely will cause burnout. Meaning, your organs only have this much they can take. And all of these perceptions that we have of life that aren't even ours give us shoulds, musts, and have tos that if we don't meet them, somehow inside it feels like we're going to die or something really bad is going to happen. And so our glands and organs start chipping away at how much they're being used by these shoulds, musts, and have tos. And before long, we get right to the edge of how much our glands and organs can take based on these shoulds, musts, and have tos, either self-imposed or imposed, taken on from others, whatever the case may be. And when we get right to the edge of how much our glands and organs can take, we feel overwhelmed. And if it lasts for long enough, that overwhelm, we will use up not only our glands and organs, the physical, but we'll use up our neurological space. We'll use up our emotional space. We'll have nothing left for ourselves. And it all originates, believe it or not, from a place of not making what your heart says and what your body says, and literally your connection to your greater wisdom matter. As soon as you make something outside of you matter more than your own innate wisdom, your own connection to your own knowing, as soon as you make that matter more, you're headed towards burnout. It doesn't mean you will. Might catch yourself before it's too late because you have an intolerance to it being that bad. So I'd love to hear from everyone who's listening right now. If you're listening right now, I'd love to hear how you've felt around this, what your experience with this is, and maybe your word for the day. I'm bringing this up on the podcast because in a world where there's a lot of change and where a lot of people are saying a lot of things and where governmental infrastructure and the entire way one country speaks to another country, the projection of values onto you or onto others is happening, it would be very easy to burn out, especially if you're a person that sees yourself as a good person. There's so much to talk about around the nervous system of humanity. And again, I'm looking for your word for the day. There's so much to say about the nervous system of humanity right now. if you even have a modicum of trying to control the world, or even a modicum of carrying the weight of the world's harmony and happiness on your shoulders, if you even have a little bit of that, then in times of great change, you may definitely find what we're talking about right now incredibly helpful. And I thank you for all the people that leave comments and share this podcast with others, because we're going to go down the wormhole of 3 different stories with some what I have found to be incredibly useful information. One of the most important abilities that a human being can have. This was taught to me by a former spy for the CIA. And of course, he was using it for one reason, but the way that we're going to talk about it isn't about using it to spy on people. It's to build bridges to the kind of world or team or organization that you want to live in, or family. So that's the first thing. Second thing is we're going to talk about, based on our conversation about perception and perspective, we're going to talk about then how to get the best out of somebody else, how to find a way to have the experience of the people around you being in their best light when they're around you, and having that possibly being an empowering experience for both of you. In other words, you could change the energy of a room. And finally, and I think I might start with this, that there are forces happening right now that have forgotten the physics of the fact that the entire universe is holographically at the center of every atom in their body. And when you forget, it's not a great thing. So I'm going to tell you a story. For some of you, this will be woo. For some of you, it won't be woo. But at this point in our evolution as humanity, I don't care anymore. So remember, I grew up as an economist, right? So I'm a very practical person. Then I ended up being a nutritionist because I ended up with migraines and I exposed myself to some toxins. And I had chronic yeast infections, and I realized that wasn't because of I had a monostat deficiency. So I went to all the doctors, but there were lots of pills, and I had nothing against doctors, and I still don't. I have trained them about epigenetics and psychoneuroimmunology and all sorts of stuff around neuroplasticity, and then how epigenetically what people think affects their body. So I love building bridges. And so when I had meningitis, doctors saved my life. I remember as a nutritionist, after when I had to save my life, I became a nutritionist and studied biology to try to figure out what was going on with me. But I remember bridging my own self and realizing that some of the doctors I had seen, they wanted to help me, but they felt powerless because the information they were given wasn't helpful to be able to help the chronic conditions that I had. They didn't know how to detoxify people, nor did they know how my mind was affecting my body. And which is probably why I ended up working with a lot of doctors, because I didn't separate myself, which speaks to something we're going to get to later, I promise, around perception and around perspective. But first things first, I remember I had transcended the migraines, and all of this was having me, all of this stuff around my health was definitely feeling like burnout to me. It was like my body was broken. It was not supporting me anymore. I was in my late 20s, early 30s at the time. And in the process, I was feeling so much better, but I didn't realize that I had picked up on a perception. And the perception I picked up on was that some outside force could exert itself on my body and make me hurt and I could be a victim of it. And in fact, even when I was growing up in my household, I was already in that vibe that something outside of me could try to control me and that I wasn't to listen to my own innate wisdom. I was to listen if I didn't want to get in trouble or if I didn't want to be yelled at, I had to morph myself to the perfectionism. And as I was taking my power back by getting sick and then finding new ways that weren't medical, and then finding doctors that were willing to listen to some of the evolutions I was internally making, I was like, hey, I can take my power back. And then what happened was that I was probably 90% better. In other words, I wasn't having migraines anymore. I wasn't having the welts come out my neck. I wasn't having chronic fatigue. And I had just left my former husband and I had purchased my own house and I had renovated it and I made a bedroom that had a fireplace in it. It was so cool. And a skylight over my bathtub in the bathroom. And I was making my life how I wanted it. But there was always this little voice in the back. Those little voices are voices of your amygdala, of the part of your brain that still wants to protect you and hedge your bets, still wants to have you just be a little bit concerned. Just watch out. It can't all be roses. And I remember that night I went to bed with my big, fluffy golden doodle beside me, Emerson. And I was just so happy and still that little voice. And what I saw was a big, dark, like a cloud above me. And here I was, I made this what I thought was a sanctuary, but included in making my sanctuary was I'm protected from the scary stuff that can hurt me. Now, if part of the reason for making a sanctuary is to protect you from the scary stuff that might hurt you, then the scary stuff that might hurt you energetically is still, the vibe of that is still included in what you're creating. If what you're creating is in response to something scary, the scary is still in it. And so my greater wisdom, I was looking at the idea that I had still included the scariness of the world. You can see how this pertains to what's going on in the world right now, right? This scariness of the world was still included. Then what happens is this big blob happens in the middle of the night when I'm in my most innocent state. Oh my God, I could be even asleep and I'm not safe. Can you imagine what that would do to my sleep cycles if I didn't hear something that I needed to hear? And all of a sudden, I got back to what it is that I know for sure. That the people that are working on Nobel Prizes in physics, that have won Nobel Prizes in physics since that happened to me, that have been looking for deeper truths, people that work on epigenetics as well, they say that even electrons are non-local. Electrons, remember we have 75 trillion cells, 100 billion, or is it 100 million? Doesn't matter. You guys put it in the comments. Atoms per cell. We're made up, and those atoms are made of electrons, protons, and neutrons. Electrons are non-local until someone decides on the truth about what's going on around them. Electrons don't go around the nucleus like a planet orbiting the sun, although that's still taught in high schools, which is insane because you ask any physicist, they will tell you that's not true. Electrons flash on, flash off. They're showing up in different localities. And that's what our world is made of. And until you decide where that electron's going to land, what your reality is going to be, either consciously, and most people are deciding subconsciously, I had decided that there could be some scary stuff. So that was still in my field. So my life landed, the actual 3-dimensional reality landed like, mostly my life is so amazing. Except there's still scary things when you're not looking. So you better pay attention, right? That's what the slot experiment is, you guys. That slot experiment that the physicists did where they fired electrons through two slots in the wall and they were looking for the pattern on the wall there where they would land on the other side of the slot. And when people were in the room and the experiment wasn't being done in a vacuum, the expectation is that it's going to land into the electrons are going to go through the two slots, just like red painted balls going through two slots. And the way they're going to land on the wall over there is in two blotchy red lines, right? Because it's going through two straight slots. But the problem is when there's a vacuum and the thoughts of the scientists can't affect the experiment, the wave forms are basically what happens is the electrons disrupt the metaphysical particles on the other side, not landing in two slots, but actually imagine that the whole field of possible potentials of electrons is on the other side, like a pool. And when you fire electrons through the slots, you're disrupting the field of possibility on the other side, rather than because there's nobody intending where the electrons can go. Our expectation has the two straight lines land when we're in the room, not in a vacuum. And when nobody's there to influence the electrons, they literally landed as though there were waves in the room, disrupting a field. There are no more two straight lines. So your expectations and your perceptions and your beliefs land reality. So here I am with this big blob. And the first thing I do with the big blob is, I was right. But the next thing that I decided to do is, wait a second. I know there are scientists right now studying that the entire universe is at the center of my protons, that the hologram of the universe is at the center of my protons. Literally, I'm living in infinite wisdom, and infinite wisdom is within me. Do I believe that or do I not believe it? Well, I could say this is evidence that I was right, that there are scary things that can just get you. I actually created the blob through my fear. And if I created it, I can uncreate it. So instantaneously, I just said, I'm not interested in you. This is a house of light. I am so not interested. Just be gone. I'm not interested. I created you so I can uncreate you. Goodbye. And it left. So I want you to know, in a world full of easy burnout, remember, you get to say you don't get to say how other people's lives land. You do get to say how your life goes. Literally, the universe is within you. And you do get to say how you behave in this world, either building bridges or amplifying the things to be afraid of. What I will share at this point is going to talk about perception, and so perceiving and perspective. So everyone has a perception. Everyone perceives through a filter. And most of those filters are unconscious. I didn't know that I still had this little thing that was hedging my bets about the thing that could come out of left field and just hurt me. But it certainly created my reality that night. And then I realized, and then what dropped in is a new total paradigm. Oh, yeah. Okay. If I created this, I can uncreate it. So all of a sudden, my organ cushion has a lot more room because now I'm not carrying the fear anymore. I'm not trying to control things, right? So I'm listening to this spy talk about in the CIA what one of the greatest skills a human being can have is, in order to be able to have empowerment, feel like they can make a difference in their lives, and feel like they can make a difference in their neighborhood or in their reality or in their surroundings or with other people. And he said, the thing you need to know is the difference between perceiving and perspective. He said, listen, everyone walks around with perceptions and perceiving. And in our work, we say the same things, like a bunch of filters. Most of them are unconscious. But the person that really has power is not interested in making their perception of the world right or in exerting their perception on someone else. That's not power. That is definitely force. However, if you want to change the world or change your world or have a conversation that creates third entity solutions that neither of you came up with, but that actually include both of you, if you want to have the miraculous be normal, then your perspective matters and their perspective matters. So now you're looking at each other's perspective. So you become someone who's interested in their perspective. Another way of saying this is St. Francis was very wise and shared that we would benefit greatly from seeking to understand instead of being understood. Seek first to understand another. In other words, understand another's perspective on it. Ask a lot of questions. And when people assist others to come out of cults, say, there's a lot of seeking to understand another perspective such that they can trust that they will be heard. And when that happens, a conversation can happen about other things. And neutrality that ensues when you actually seek to understand another first. And what happens is over time, when someone feels deeply heard and their perspective is understood, they will change how they perceive the world or not. But there is no chance of changing their perception of the world if you haven't understood their perspective first. It is one of the most powerful things you can do. So the last thing is about my walk on the beach, which has to do with that. I was walking on the beach today and I found these. I found this and I found this and I found this little guy and I found, you get my gist. I even found this. And then I found this. All within probably 10 steps. And I hadn't found a heart rock in ages. And all these different heart rocks, heart coral, heart shells, whatever they are, they're all different. Some of them look more like hearts if you look at them at an angle. Some of them are rough around the edges. Some of them I didn't pick up because they look like hearts when the sand was covering a part of them on this retreat that we're on. But then when you pick them up, there's a corner there that it didn't make it a heart anymore. But imagine that these are all other human beings and that each of these hearts comes from a different perspective. She was looking for a perfect heart. And I'm like, if we look for perfect hearts, we're going to be upset a lot of the time. And looking for a perfect heart is about looking for safety everywhere you go. Are you safe? Are you safe? Are you safe? And your life becomes about being vigilant for a lack of safety. And if you're going to live that way, you're going to spend a lot of time upset in this world right now because you are not going to find perspective, but you are going to find different hearts everywhere. And I have a friend named Frank who, much like my friend Ann Dolph, who's listening right now, she saw the strife with politics in the United States. And just think about what blue and red come together. What color do they make? And she realized that it was purple. There's more to that story. I'm sure there's going to be more in the future. But what I would say is that I was speaking to my friend Frank about Anne. And Frank said, there's a bunch of mountain people that are pretty resilient and they have a certain way of being. And they've been doing their thing for a long time in North Carolina. And I really feel like for us all to come together, everyone needs to be heard. We need to hear how they perceive life. And then we need to build bridges, especially after Asheville had the huge hurricane pass through. And everyone was helping everyone. Didn't matter which end of things that you came from. But you could see that everyone had art. Everyone was in a different place. But everyone's love showed up a different way. Mine showed up a different way. I was way out in California at the time. Oddly, they just had their own issues. Odd that while things were happening in Asheville, I was at her place, and then I came back here and she had something happen. But my way of helping her wasn't to go there and help her rebuild her house. It's just letting her know I'm here and I love her. And I could talk and she can just rant and rave and I'll just listen with neutral ears. That's my heart. Here, there were people that fed people with all this stuff in their freezers because there was no electricity. And there were people going to church, and there are people like donating all this stuff they were going to give away to Goodwill, and just make it people donating their trailers so that people had a house, had a home, so that there's all these trailers right now that aren't going on vacation this year because people are living it. So everyone's heart said different things and everyone jumped in a different way. My next door neighbor that was very protective of themselves, they literally got their water working and they said anyone can come over. They don't let people come on their property. They let everyone come over and get buckets of water. So I want you to know the perception within you can cause you to burn out. If you carry your health, your life, the happiness of other people, it's the biggest way people burn out. Your lack of understanding of others causes you to need to protect yourself. That's carrying yourself. And if you're going to carry yourself, you're going to burn out. Protect your family, yourself. It's like those people that were protecting their property. And then, of course, from the idea of finding perceptions, I want to say that in this retreat, one of the things that we talked about yesterday is something I want to finish this podcast with. And that is that infinite wisdom didn't give you feelings just so you could react to what's going on around you. You only react based on your perception. If your perception causes you to freak out or to feel afraid or to be upset or to stamp your feet, then the perception you're living into, by definition, is not in alignment with how greater consciousness, infinite wisdom, the divine, physics, flow, God, I don't care what you call it, sees life. It's only when you tell yourself a deeper truth and look at it from a greater point of view that you start to drop into what is true. And what is true will always feel expansive and good. Like having a big, scary energy, which I'd never experienced in my life, in your room. And then realizing that at your core, the truth is, I have the entire universe at the center of my protons in order for the equation for the entire universe to work. Therefore, I'm not really interested in you. We all, in these times of great change, can't afford to be so precious. It really is time to be much more responsible for how we perceive each other and how we perceive this world, and much more conscious about whether we're going to argue for our righteousness about our perception, which can change in an instant, or whether we're going to try to seek to understand others so that we don't get burnt out. Not only do we not get burnt out, but if we should decide to be a bridge builder rather than someone that tries to control things to try to get the world the way that we think it should be. And so if you should choose to live a way where you seek to understand, what happens is you're going to be available to solutions. Safety doesn't come from control. Safety comes from your connection with your greater wisdom, which can only come when you consistently seek deeper truths and own the deeper truths that you know from full presence. And that is a level of mastery that we're being called to right now in this world of great change. It's a level of mastery. And for those of you that are listening right now that are my clients that I've had the pleasure of working with, I'm just so grateful to take you on that journey. And for those of you that are hearing this for the first time, I'm so grateful that you're here today. But we are all in this together, my friends. In the meantime, make sure you follow us. Make sure you share this with someone that you know they really could use. Maybe this is just what they needed. So thank you for passing it on. Thank you for following us. Make sure you follow. That's how the word gets out even more. And I'm so excited for everything we're going to be chatting about on the podcast to come. Just love you guys. Until next time. Hey, I deeply appreciate you joining me on the Thriving Life podcast. In these times of great change, it's so good to come together. I'm on a mission to empower you with the knowledge, experiences, and tools to turn your dreams into reality. Your dreams matter. Thank you for joining me because you, like me, are a movement of one to many. Your thoughts and suggestions really matter to me, so please join me on LinkedIn at Jennifer Huff or on Instagram at The Wide Awakening and post a comment about what you got from the show or drop me a DM. I love that. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you enjoy today's show, please leave a review or many reviews. Share the love. It really helps us to reach more people, and that is what a movement is all about. Until next time, keep thriving.